Hey guys, welcome back. I'm accompanied by my dogs today, so if they pop up, that's Dolly and Ender is around here somewhere, so if you see them bebopping around, I'm sorry. But since I'm going to talk about my mental health journey, it might be somewhat of a lengthy video, so buckle up, grab your seltzer water or whatever it is you kids are into, and get comfy. So I first want to start and say, this might be some very dark, triggering subjects. So if you are triggered by self-harm, suicidal ideation, or if you are my parents, please tread lightly going forward because it's gonna get kind of dark and I don't want anyone to be upset or obviously triggered by anything that I say. So now's your chance to leave. So I want to start by saying I grew up with the best childhood possible. Now, my parents did split, my mom and my dad. They split when I was about 2 years old, and I grew up with my dad in Iowa. And when I was about 7, my dad, my stepmom, and myself, we moved to South Florida to Parkland, where my parents still live now. And we were a family unit, like things were good. I still flew out of state to see my mom every now and again, and I really had the best lifestyle and upbringing ever as a kid. My dad was very involved, my stepmom was very involved. I was in sports and they were coaches and they would help me out. Like, I really had such a great childhood. I wanted for nothing. Of course, I wanted things that were expensive and materialistic, but I think that's something that every kid wants, and I didn't get them because my parents were trying to teach me that I can't just have everything that I want, and I have to save and I have to budget for it. And these are definitely life learnings that I have multiple times said to my dad, you're right, you were right. I understand why you didn't get me that $25 Tommy Hilfiger shirt back in 1997 when that was popular. And $27, $25 was a lot of money for a shirt. It still is. But I have no childhood trauma. I have nothing that is a catalyst for my mental health, my mental illnesses, other than biological. And I understand that this was just the card that I was dealt, and that's just, my burden to bear, I guess. It might sound dramatic. And if you hear the crunching, that's just the dogs, both of them chewing bones right next to me. But I don't really know when it started, but I can tell you back when I was about 7, 8 years old, I often had stomach aches. And it was kind of like I felt nauseous, but I never ended up getting sick. And this was something that happened for me for a long time. And now this is something that I recognize as me having anxiety. Now, I don't remember the racing heart back when I was a kid, but I do remember feeling nauseous. And for me now, as an adult, when I am having an anxiety attack, I feel nauseous. I feel like my throat is closing, but I also feel like I'm gonna be sick. So like that combination, terrible. But then I also have the palpitations, the racing thoughts, the sweaty palms, no mom's spaghetti, definitely kind of sweaty in my armpits, like awful. And so this is my first memory of kind of struggling with mental illness, or what I'm going to self-diagnose as a 34-year-old person for, 7, 8-year-old Sarah. And really, that's all I can remember. I've had a phobia of throwing up since I was a kid. I can remember back, when I lived in Iowa, and I only lived there until I was about 7 years old. I remember a friend of mine having a sleepover party, and she threw up all over my New Kids on the Block pillowcase, and I remember like having anxiety about it, or like being upset by it. And then I remember when I was 7 or 8, when we first moved to South Florida, my dad, my stepmom, and I, we went to Universal Studios, and while we were waiting in line for a ride, I guess somebody had thrown up in the line, and so my stepmom went through the line so my dad and I could kind of stay off to the side so I wouldn't have to see it. So that's something that I still struggle with to this day. I think it's called emetophobia, I don't know how to pronounce it, but I know it's a real thing and not just a made up in my head thing, and I've met a lot of people who actually have the same issue. So it's nice to not be alone. But then, I think around 13 or 14, I think I really started to struggle. I believe 13 or 14 was when I started self-harming. I was a cutter, and I guess, you know, if you want to talk in similar to like alcoholics and narcotic sufferers, addiction sufferers, I guess I am a cutter. I'm still a cutter. I will always be a cutter. While I'm not actively cutting, that's something that I've struggled with since I was 13 or 14 years old. So, you know, that's about 20 years. And I don't remember my first time doing it. I don't obviously remember why I did it. I don't know where I learned it. I don't really remember, but I remember that's when it started. And then I, you know, was starting to feel depression. I remember being really sad and hiding in my room and not wanting to talk to my parents and really just being an asshole to my parents. My parents are watching, sorry. And just not being the friendly and outgoing person that I feel like I was as a kid and that I am now. And I just was really having a hard time. And I remember kind of struggling with suicidal ideation at 15 years old, because I remember having an online friend and telling her that I was not feeling well, and for some, you know, reason or amazingness, she was able to figure out what school I went to, and she called and said, hey, you need to talk to this girl. So I was called up to the guidance counselor's office while I was a student at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School, and, you know, that's when I guess the whole mental illness thing was started to be recognized, especially by my parents, because obviously they had to call my dad and let him know. And I remember the next day going to Einstein Bagels and getting a bagel with my dad and really starting to talk about kind of mental health stuff. And I think I started seeing a therapist and a psychiatrist then. I was 15. So I started therapy. I don't really know how long I was in there, but I also was seeing a psychiatrist. And at that age, I was diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder and bipolar depression. Now, I guess this is a story that we have to just keep going because I don't have bipolar depression. It was a false diagnosis, but I guess, you know, back then that's what my symptoms looked like. So moving forward, I was still struggling, depression, cutting. And then when I was 17 years old, I attempted suicide for the first time. And I'm not going to go into details of how or anything because I don't think that that's important, but I did. I tried. I took a very expensive ambulance ride to the emergency room. My parents, my two doctors, they decided that I was unsafe, so they sent me in another ambulance ride up to a different hospital in northern Palm Beach County, and I stayed there for a couple days to be like watched and go through the group therapy sessions and stuff that I had to do. And I remember the whole time hating it and wanting to be home. And so I basically just kind of faked my way through it and was like, I'm fine. I didn't mean it. I'm fine. Like, I just want to go home. And they eventually sent me home, and that was that. But I don't really remember much after that as far as like what happened. But I know I was still cutting. And I remember like when 9/11 happened, it was very triggering for me, and I like really kind of got intense with it. And then I remember every day just seeing the videos of like us bombing the Middle East, and it was like bombing, and then them always showing the videos of like the planes hitting the buildings, and it was just like so much of this shocking footage of real life things that was just played over and over in my head, and it just made me so paranoid, and I didn't know what was going to happen, and I was out of control. I couldn't control anything, and I couldn't control the like winding thoughts. And so I remember just sitting in my room and just really self-harming so much, because the best way that I can describe self-harming for people who don't is I like math. not so much in school, but I like math because there's always a solution. I like algebra. There's always a solution. You can always solve for X. And so I feel like when my brain is kind of spinning, going, if I self-harm, then it solves a problem. I hurt or I'm bleeding because of this action, and it solves a problem, and then I feel in my head that that's me controlling the situation. I have control, so then I can calm down. And I find that anytime I'm out of control of my situation, that's when my anxiety gets really bad. I would say that that's why I don't drink or do drugs, and because I need to always have constant control over my body, over my mind, just so I can function as a human being. So I don't believe I was in therapy then. Fast forward 19 years old, 20 years old. I started dating somebody, obviously names are going to be withheld, who was very abusive. Not so much physical, sometimes physical, but very emotionally, mentally, verbally abusive. Very abusive, cheating on me all the time, like horrible, awful. And then I had some medical things happening in my life, and so it was just, I was really struggling, and so I was like, I need to go back to therapy, and I did. And I found this person in Coral Springs who was the most amazing therapist, and I have been struggling to find somebody as good as her, but she was, you know, a younger gal, and just always made me feel welcome, and I could say anything, and it wasn't the type of therapist where it was like, and how did that make you feel? Where they would write everything down. It was very like, she would call me out on my shit, or she would give me advice where it was needed. And, you know, it was definitely very therapeutic and definitely what I needed at the time and have since needed. I miss her a lot. And so I was in therapy on and off. I mean, with her pretty consistently, sometimes multiple days a week. But I was okay, and I wasn't really self-harming despite the, you know, terrible relationship that I was in. And then 2007, I moved to Montana, and obviously had to stop going to therapy, and eventually was off my parents' insurance and had to get my own insurance, and, you know, kind of was trying to find somebody in Montana, but didn't really find anybody that was, you know, that I found to be helpful. I even tried like hypnotherapy. I tried being on medication, but then the medication that I was on, it wasn't working. I should probably also backtrack a little bit. I was later diagnosed, 18, 19, 20, 21-ish, not with bipolar, but with adult ADHD. And that, you know, my frustrations with my inability to finish tasks, finish anything, made me frustrated, made me depressed. And because my mind was always doing this, and I couldn't focus on, you know, I couldn't just pull one thing down and focus on this one thing. It was always like, oh, let me start this, I was so frustrated, and that's kind of causing my depression. And for those of you who suffer from ADHD, you probably understand what I'm saying. I'm sorry that, you know, we're in this boat, but at least we're in this boat together. So I, you know, tried a non-stimulant medication, Strattera, and I feel like it was really helpful for me back then. And then I, you know, got off of it because of, I don't even remember, this was so long ago. So that's, you know, that's right now what I currently am diagnosed with is adult ADHD, generalized anxiety, and then obviously some depression. Probably it goes a little bit further than just being frustrated because I can't handle my ADHD. But I still think about self-harming. The last time I self-harmed, it was probably a year ago, just over a year ago. Yeah, but I think about it every single day. And I recently spoke with a friend of mine who is a recovering addict. And I was like, do you feel like you find yourself bartering? And he was like, what do you mean? Excuse me. I was like, do you find yourself bartering? Like, if I can take this one hit, if I can do this drug one time, it'll solve anything. And he was like, yeah. So I feel like often in times of severe stress and anxiety and, you know, mental unwell, I feel like I barter with myself. If I can just self-harm one time, I'll feel better, like I'll have more control. And while I don't, and I have to talk myself out of it, like it's I think about it almost every single day. And I still some days struggle with suicidal ideation. I don't have a plan. I'm not going to move forward with it, but it's just sometimes when I am feeling down and out, sometimes I'm just like, what's my purpose? Why am I here? You know, things might be better for this person, that person, the other person, the situation if I wasn't around anymore. And obviously I rationally understand that that's completely irrational, and I know that it's untrue. But you know, when you have mental illness, your brain makes you believe the most asinine things, and it's really sad and unfortunate, and it's hard. It's so hard, and it's so taxing. And I made an IGTV video a couple days ago over the weekend, basically stating that I feel like I am always exhausted because my brain is always moving, always thinking, always worrying, and I never get a chance to relax. I never fully relax. Even in times when I'm supposed to be relaxing, like getting a massage, I'm thinking about things I should be doing, I want to be doing. I'm mad that I didn't do. This person that I, had this conversation with, I never stop. I never sleep through the night. I'm always tossing and turning. I wake up on, feeling unrested, like I didn't sleep at all. And, I've been in and out of therapy here in Philadelphia. I was seeing somebody a couple years ago, 3.5, 4 years ago, and then I switched companies, switched insurance, and then she left the practice, and I really liked her. And then I was seeing somebody earlier this year, and then I left my job and got a new job, and don't have health insurance currently, but I don't think I'm going to go back because I didn't feel like I was being helped by that person. And the doctor that was prescribing me medicine gave me some medicine that I just wasn't comfortable with, and then the sample packs that he gave me were a couple years expired. So I don't think I'll be going back there, but the main thing is that's basically my journey. I don't have any reason for it other than I'm sure some things trickle down through my family tree, and I fight every single day, and a lot of days are harder than others, and it seems like lately life's really been trying to get me while I'm down. And the thing with mental illness is it's not just one person's problem, it's everyone's problem, because it's not just me that has to deal with it. It's the people that I'm in relationship with, be it my my personal relationships, my boyfriend, my family, my roommates, my friends, my coworkers. It affects everybody. And lately I feel like it affects everybody negatively just because I'm so relatively unwell that I feel like I'm jeopardizing those people who are closest to me because I can't seem to get it together. And I recognize that this is a problem, and I don't know how to fix it. And that's why it's so important for people who are struggling to get help and to ask for help, and knowing that getting help is okay. If you feel like you need help, if you feel like you need help for reasons other than the things that I'm going through, it's worth trying. With my health insurance, I was paying $20 a session to go. And that's, affordable for me and my budget. But, I think of a friend of mine committed suicide back in 2005, and I keep thinking about him and how sad we all were at his funeral. And, I can only imagine how his family feels and his parents feel, and I don't want to do that to the people around me. But, sometimes it's hard, and sometimes my brain says, you're not good enough, you're not pretty enough, you're not thin enough, you're not whatever enough. And I don't know how to make those thoughts stop. So I'm trying to be easy with myself, but it's not always that easy. And I seclude myself a lot because at the end of the day, right now, I only have enough energy to go to work and do my job to the best of my ability. And then I come home and I'm completely drained. I interact with customers. I work in a mall. I manage a store. And I spend all of my energy just getting by at work, to where when I come home, I have nothing left. I have just enough to ensure my pets are fed and taken out and watered and whatever you need to do with animals, and loved and snuggled, and that's it. You know, my days off, I try to go to the gym. I try to do some chores. I'm going to start trying to do yoga this week. Hopefully I go and don't chicken out. But I'm just trying to find something to kind of keep it together and to keep me going. So, you know, you can find therapists that are specialized in different areas where you feel like you need help, depression or anxiety or addiction or, you know, abuse or trauma. You know, I will say that the school shooting that happened at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School, my alma mater, last year on Valentine's Day, really made me struggle. And while I didn't personally lose anybody, you know, a family member of mine was there that day. And, you know, knowing that my family member was there, and, you know, it's hard. And hearing people talking about the situation when they don't really have all the facts and they don't know all of it really kind of gets under my skin and really is kind of triggering for me, because you know, it hit so close to home. So I guess my message at the end of the day is, if you feel like you need help, get help. You're not alone. I'm not alone. We all have to kind of look out for one another and, you know, make sure that everyone's okay. And Headspace, the app, the meditation app on my phone today, said something about asking somebody about their day or how they're doing, and just not judging their response and just listening to the response. And I think that that's so important, is just making sure that everybody's okay and you're look out for your strong friends. I think that phrase is a little dumb, but it's true. You never know what somebody is struggling with. You never know what somebody's going through, and it's really important to kind of make sure that the people around you are okay, because it's scary asking for help. It's hard to ask for help. It takes a lot of energy to ask for help. It takes a lot of energy to recognize that you have a problem. So, you know, if you know somebody who's struggling, ask them how you can help. Maybe the person's going to tell you they don't want help, but at least you're trying. Because, you know, I just wish my friend who passed away back in 2005, I wish he would have asked for help. Somebody, maybe not me, but somebody, because I'm sure myself and a million other people would have done anything to make sure that he got the help that he felt that he needed. And there's not a day that goes by that I don't think about him, because, you know, he was not somebody that I expected that to happen to. And he was loved by so many people. So you are all loved by somebody, even if it's just, you know, your neighbor or your pets or your plants or anyone that is in your bubble. You know, you are loved, and it's worth it to stay. And I hope that this helps somebody. I know it's kind of cathartic for me to kind of talk about my journey and get it off my chest, especially right now when I can't go to therapy and I don't have somebody to talk to. But I hope you guys have a great rest of your day or night, and I will be back when I'm back. Have a good one. Bye.